Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for a discussion about small business and hiring and rehiring. I'm James Cowan, editor of Report on Business magazine. I'll be filling in today for my colleague, Dawn. If you have any technical difficulties, please let us know in the Q&A box so we can try to help. If you have questions for today's speakers, please type them into the Q&A box as well. We'll take a few of your questions closer to the end of the panel. Everyone who registered for the webcast will receive a link for the recorded version so you can view the event again at your convenience. The recording should be ready in about a week. During today's webcast, we'll explore some of the challenges small businesses are facing when bringing back staff with strategies and solutions that can help. We have a great lineup of speakers to cover the issues. I'm going to introduce them to you now. Hedi Afsfarian is a director of business banking with CIBC. Hedi works with a team of bankers and business developers to bring advice on day-to-day operations and growth to small and medium-sized businesses in Canada. Hi there, Hedi.
Hi, next we have how are you? Kaylin. Thank you for having me.
I'm well. Next, we have Kaylin McNeil, founder of Big Wheel Burger in Victoria. Big Wheel is Canada's first carbon-neutral restaurant and currently operates 3 stores in Victoria. It opened its 4th in Nanaimo during the COVID-19 outbreak and plans to open its 5th store in Courtenay over the next several weeks. We're also pleased to have Sherry-Ann Woodley, owner and founder of Mona Home and Office Cleaning. Sherry-Ann also recently acquired a franchise of Senior Helpers, a company in Markham, Ontario, providing in-home care for the elderly. Both of Sherry-Ann's companies are in hiring mode. And last but not least, we have Chris Roach, principal with the David Applin Group, a recruiting, staffing, and employment firm. Chris has served multiple terms on the Association of Canadian Search, Employment, and Staffing Services. He will share insights on Canada's labor and talent markets, along with strategies to ease the transition of employees returning to work. Welcome to you all. And Hedi, let's start with you. At this point in time, small businesses are gradually starting to reopen. Some, of course, remained open throughout the shutdown, but we really are seeing a ramping up now. What are you noticing with small businesses as they prepare to ramp back up and rehire?
Okay. Thank you for having me on this program. I'm very happy to be here to discuss this all-important matter of reopening our economy and getting people back to work, back to what they love doing best, which is serving their communities. Before I start my comments, I would be remiss if I did not mention the irreversible impact of COVID on families and communities who lost lives of loved ones. So our prayers and our thoughts are with them. During a recent CIBC poll, we saw 81% of the businesses communicate that they have been negatively impacted by COVID, clearly. But then there was also a very positive and immense sense of optimism in those businesses that they had this willingness of wanting to move forward, of wanting to reinvent and transform their businesses. 45% of these businesses said that they are thinking of revamping or pivoting or transforming their business to prepare themselves for COVID and post-COVID, trying to predict what is going to happen to their business. And what we learned from our clients, small business owners who are truly the heroes in this rebound story, is that resiliency, innovation, and perseverance were key components for them to want to be able to create the changes that they need to change to help themselves and their businesses stay above. We saw transformation of businesses during COVID. And I want to give you some examples of what we saw. For example, we saw daycare services who were closed but nevertheless, they stayed in touch with their clients by providing lesson plans for the week on a Sunday afternoon so that the parents can have something to keep the kids occupied with during the week. We had examples of dog grooming businesses, for example, who had to shut down, but they quickly transitioned their advice services onto a telephone or a chat platform where they could help families and individuals who were becoming dog owners for the first time during COVID. And as you know, puppy sales were through the roof during COVID. We had clients in the food and beverage industry wanting to transition their business because they could not have a dining room open. And they moved on to providing prepare at home meal kits where people can cook for themselves at home by picking up these kits. And then very interestingly, we had grocery chains who took on to artificial intelligence in preparing grocery orders for curbside pickups or delivery. And then there are a few components that were quite common amongst businesses that pivoted themselves through this COVID period and then prepared themselves to open up successfully. Some of these components were, one, communication. So businesses that stayed connected with their employees through COVID were successful in reopening and in engaging the employees back again quite quickly. We are social human beings. We want to feel part of a network. We want to feel part of a work family. And to continue that team environment and that camaraderie was very critical. And businesses who did that well, they were quite successful in getting their employees back. Secondly, being supportive and being flexible was very critical. And we saw consistency in businesses that were successful in coming back to be flexible and supportive. And how did they do that? They did that by staggering and scaling their return to work strategies. They provided benefits for their employees to entice them to come back to work. And interestingly enough, in a couple of scenarios, we saw profit sharing opportunities where employers were to get them to come back to work.
If you could just hold on for one. Okay, there we go. Oh, please continue. Sorry, we were having technical issues for a minute, but you're back in and we can hear you now. So please keep going.
Okay. And then lastly, and in my opinion, the most important is ensuring that your staff is feeling safe coming back to work. Communicating constantly with your team on how you are taking provisions for healthcare, or how you're taking provisions for safety and providing PPE equipment for them. Some of the businesses use the Canada Emergency Business Loans that they received to take these measures and to provide this PPE supplies for their employees. But all in all, most employers were successful in bringing their employees back to work, other than the reasons that I just mentioned, for the one reason that at the end of the day, the human psychology is requires the need to belong to a network, requires the need to belong to a family at work. And that sense of wanting to be purposeful in our jobs and in our occupations on a day-to-day basis. So people were willing to go back to work. And we found that very exciting. And we learned quite a bit from our clients who, like I said, are quite frankly the heroes in this story.
Thanks so much. Chris, turning to you, maybe that's a good spot talking about people going back to work. You're a recruitment expert and you focus on onboarding new employees. Could you talk to us right now about what Canada's pool of available workers look like, and maybe talk a little bit in detail about skilled labor and general labor as well, please?
Thank you. Yes, I think we're all aware that in the last couple of years, we've seen a tremendous skill shortage within Canada and in North America and perhaps globally. And that really has changed a little bit, but not a lot. The labor market is completely different. With the talent market, the skills market, certainly in the STEM technology type roles, we're still seeing demand. We do have, our firm in particular has positions right now across the country that we are still struggling to fill. But in general, yes, there are more people on the market. Let's face it, 3 million Canadians lost their jobs. we're probably close to 15% unemployment, which would precede the 1982 numbers that we had, and that was an economic policy issue. This is something where we're still in the middle of this, so we don't know. All I know is where we are today and where we've been in the last 4 months. So with the labor market, I think the challenge for small business will be as these people come off the government assistance programs, the CERBs and the EIs, they'll start to re-enter the market. I think a lot of these people have checked out for the summer. We'll start to see them transition back into the market in September, October. October right now is when the program ends, and as those who have come to the end of the 13 weeks will start to enter the market. There's a great opportunity on the skills side and for even on the labor side to upscale your talent right now within your own company, and that's really by looking at what's out there, what does your team look like now, and what do you want that team to look like moving forward. I think the ability to attract this talent to your company is going to come down to your leadership. And this has been a great test for us all in leading our teams, because we're in unprecedented times. This is new for all of us. None of us have been through this before. To Hetty's point there, making sure that your employees are going to feel safe is very, very important. To get them back, and leadership is really going to make a big difference. On the skilled side, what we found is, as much as we haven't had a large amount of people come into the market, we have a large amount of people who are willing to talk to us right now. When typically it's twice a year, it's when you have your birthday and the end of the year, people will consider their career, their lives, where they want to go. But COVID has actually prompted everyone to do that, to really step back, look at our lives, what's important to us, where do we want to be. Not all employees are happy on how their companies handled this whole crisis. And because of that, they're willing to talk. And for those companies who have clear communication, for those companies who can genuinely care about their employees and can ensure them that by action and words that they will provide a safe environment for them to work in, are the ones who are going to be able to upscale their talent. And that may include things like profit sharing and better benefits, paying better than just minimum wage. There has to be more into it. What's in it for them? But there's a great opportunity for a lot of employers right now, and there will be for the next few months, to really upscale your teams and to really understand where you want your business to go and who you need to be on. For those companies who have deployed people virtually, it's going to be a little more challenging because not everyone can adapt to that situation. For those who are working together in small groups, you'll have to, again, ensure the safety and provide strong leadership.
That might be a good place to talk to the two folks, the actual employers. Sherry Ann, how have things been going for you through the pandemic?
Well, James, thank you for having me, first of all, and thank you for bringing up the conversation. These are definitely unprecedented times, and I can't tell you the number of people that have approached me about how to maneuver through this. It's been very challenging for me right now. First of all, service-based businesses are always on the hire. If you're in service, hiring is something that you always do. So the challenge now becomes, both my businesses. So I have a chemical-free cleaning service. We do homes and offices throughout the GTA. I have a senior care business here in Markham where we provide private in-home care one-on-one. But both of these businesses are people-heavy. They're both in the service industry, and they both typically don't hire full-timers. So it's a number of locations that make up a person's work schedule. So now with the new rules, I can only assign one person to a home, and that impacts their income because in other industries or in other jobs available to them, so some of the community centers that are available for seniors, you can work in multiple homes. Well, that's now changed due to COVID. And so you're only allowed to work in one location per day. Well, it's a mostly part-time industry, which means now it's a 3 to maybe 6 hours, if you're lucky, day. Most seniors can only afford about 3 hours of care a day. So we've had to get creative with how we help people survive through this while trying to service our customers. And when I say creative, I really mean, we need to know that you're collecting CERB, and then we're going to only allow you to work up to $1,000 because that's legally what you're allowed to do. And it is a balancing act. We do have to hire more because everybody's at part-time now, and trying to help them balance this income for their families. And it's near and dear to me. I mean, it's really important. How do you go from being employed to not being employed and having a child at home, not being able to work multiple locations and still needing to make that income? So we've had to get creative that way. And in the cleaning service, well, nobody really wants us in their home right now. There's still a lot of fear out there. We do have a few workers that are willing to get back. But again, it's been creative. We've been going after more after hours cleans rather than residential. So we've been impacted greatly.
For those few workers who are talking about wanting to come back, and I guess for your other business, what kinds of conversations have you had with your workers to convince them that it is safe to return to work, that it is to give them that reassurance that we were talking about earlier with some of our other speakers?
So let me start by saying that conversation started the day we were told that, we had to close. So one is keeping that line of communication open, letting them know that we're here and really understanding their scenario. And I will ask them, what is it that you require to live? Like, what does that look like for you? What are you going through? I always tell my people, the more you tell me is the more I'm able to help you. I will clearly understand where you are and be able to offer up the right solutions for you. But if I don't know that, then it seems as though you either don't want to work or just can't work. But the more conversations that we have is the more, that we can work things out for them. So it's really all around, these are the hours available. These are the safety measures that we've put in place. We've always offered masks for certain jobs and gloves, but in both services. And now we've heightened that. We've got face masks. We've asked our residential clients to either be in another part of the home while we clean, or to actually leave the home while we clean. The beauty about our business is we've had access to the majority of the homes most of the time. So that's easy. When it comes to travel, though, this is where I'm fearful because, you could have to take 2 or 3 buses to get to a location in both businesses. So we used to have a driver in the past, and now we've had to revisit that. At one home a day or one location a day, it's become a little easier. So this may be our norm.
Kaylin, how's it been going for you? You've, if I'm not mistaken, you stayed open during the pandemic. You've actually been hiring. What's that experience been like?
Thanks, James. I basically, when the COVID first hit, we were open. We stayed open. We decided to close briefly because we had a staff member or a couple managers express that they had some symptoms of flu-like symptoms. So we ended up just shutting everything down. We built a COVID operating plan and just followed the best practices at the time and revamped our business. I mean, we're a quick service restaurant, so we have about 35 seats. We do a robust takeout business. We didn't do deliveries, but we started to build a delivery plan, just trying to figure out how we could generate as much revenue as possible. Obviously, the employee retention component of it, we're dealing with some mental health type issues and fears. And that doesn't just go for our employees, it goes for our ownership group and our management group. So it was really a time just to rally everybody together, reinforce that we're going to follow the best safety practices. Hang
on for 1 second. Oh, there we go. You're back. Please continue.
Minimum wage, we provide health benefits. We're looking at doing a profit sharing component. We also have a foundation. So we had all this stuff set up in advance. So we are sort of ready to deal with some of these crisis points. I think as far as the staff retention goes, at the time of COVID, we had just opened, or we're just about to open our 4th restaurant in Nanaimo. And obviously, we had to abruptly stop. We laid everybody off. So we had about 110 people on our payroll. So we're now back up to about 95 and somewhat reduced. We don't have dine-in. We're not doing dine-in for the foreseeable future. But we've just really been there. I mean, my messaging initially to everybody was that, what do you guys need? And
Chris, hang on for 1 second. I think we've lost your audio. Oh.
No?
Hetty, maybe I could throw a question over to you. Both Chris and Sherry-Ann have talked about the fact that throughout the even when we are reopening, even when things are starting up, businesses are facing constraints because of social distancing or because people are reluctant to go back to work. How are you seeing businesses effectively manage cash flow and those issues in terms of paying salaries, bringing back employees?
Of course. Thank you for asking that question. That is very critical to address now that we're going back and reopening the economy. Some of the advice that we have and some of the best practices that we've seen with our clients is really around one factor, which may seem very rudimentary if I mention it here now, but going in deeper and understanding your business and knowing your COVID cash flow is very critical. Consulting your accounting professional and keeping them close by is very, very important because it's really all about understanding the scaling and matching up your revenue stream with your expenses of both variable and fixed expenses during COVID. And then now during reopening. So clearly things are different. And when things are different, you need to revisit your plan. And the most important part of your business plan is obviously your cash flow, and you need to revisit that. So some of the recommendations that we made to our clients at CIBC is, firstly, review your fixed expenses and develop a plan to either reduce the fixed expenses or defer and receive the support that may be available to you. If you have personal or business borrowings already at hand, and if you're facing hardship, you need to speak to your CIBC business advisor or your respective bank advisor to see what the deferral options are on those payments, just to help you monitor your cash flow. Secondly, we recommend that you review your other expenses, such as some more variable expenses, such as suppliers, inventories, and other major structural costs. Just to ensure that, again, your ordering and your inventory and your purchasing is matching your current situation. And then also realize that if this shortage of revenue, if you're facing a shortage of revenue, and if that exists, is it short-term or is it going to be a longer-term phenomenon? And then how do you address that? Again, some pointers on advice. Have you considered asking your suppliers for longer-term payments, perhaps a 30-day or a 60-day payment period? Have you thought about diversifying your sources of revenue? And then this goes back to the comment we made earlier about transitioning and pivoting and reinventing yourself as a result of COVID. Diversifying your sources of revenue becomes really, really important for your operating model. And then really, essentially, the most important thing you can do as you're getting back into business is just making sure your expenses and your revenues are a match, including your wages and your salaries. lastly, just a tip on perhaps revisiting your coverage for your insurance coverage for any business interruptions to see if there is any coverage there. And then one last bonus tip, we really need to up your game on cybersecurity during this time. There is so much activity happening online, and it becomes very, very important for business owners to take whatever measure that they need to make to not only protect themselves and protect their clients against phishing emails and cyber fraud. Very, very important.
Thank you so much. I guess the flip side to that question is for Chris. We are in this time actually seeing some industries, IT, digitally facing industries, are actually seeing a hike in demand, and I'm wondering, is that been your experience, and what could small businesses do in these competitive fields to be attracting employees during this time when suddenly we see a jump in demand for certain sectors?
Well, clearly, we have seen an increase in our IT demand right across the country. Also, accounting and finance and human resources seem to be very buoyant right now, but IT for sure. And what we're seeing with the IT world is where the talent is coming on the market is there's typically a large core of individuals who tend to want to work as independent contractors. They make a lot more money doing that than they do as a staff employee, and they've done well in the last several years. If it's a development project that's been canceled, they're more likely now to enter a conversation with us about permanent opportunities. Understanding that they'll make less money, but people are much more risk averse right now on what they want to do with their careers. So again, and when going back to attracting the people to your organization, it's really about your brand. It's about who you are. And it's not about who you think you are. It's about who you really are. It's what people say about when you leave the room, not when you're in the room. And companies have to really step it up right now. And you have to have strong leadership, strong transparency, good communication with your staff. And then you'll be able to have those conversations to get those people. But certain industries like IT, like human resources, like accounting and finance are certainly in demand right now with companies for senior people. On the more intermediate entry-level roles, yes, there's a lot of people on the market at this time. So I think you really have to make sure you have a polished brand. You can go out there, communicate effectively to these communities to try to attract this talent into your organization.
Sure, Anne, you were talking earlier, and I wanted to go back to this point, this notion of having employees who are balancing the work they're doing with you with CIRB. And are you, in terms of those conversations you're having, are you having people who sometimes say that they simply prefer to stay on CIRB entirely, or what does that conversation sound like? Can you give us a little bit more detail on that?
Yeah, that's exactly how the conversation goes. They straight up say, we make more money on CIRB and it's a lot less work and a lot less fear. I think that as much as they're bold in their statements, they're living in fear. They are fearful to come back. They're fearful of the environment. They're fearful of working with the elderly and perhaps bringing an illness into them or even contracting it there. So the conversation really is really hinged upon safety as well as, and I guess safety from all angles, safety in terms of the number of hours we're giving them, how they're going into the home, the equipment that we're providing with them. And it's really boiling down, how many hours are you available per month? And finding a client or a schedule that suits that, so that they do stay below the $1,000 and they can still collect the $2,000 for CIRB. At the end of the day, they, in many cases, because of the demographic we hire, they have children at home. And that means that they're doing school and they're trying to work and they're trying to do all the things while working for me. So the conversations are deep and they're personal, but my goal is to help, and anybody who wants to work, I'm going to help them do that safely.
Chris, could I get your perspective on that as well? You mentioned earlier that you think some people who are not working right now are going to wait out till the end of the summer until they come back. Do you think there is also some of the push-pull between just sticking with CERB versus returning to the workforce, waiting until it expires? What are you seeing?
There's some of that going on for sure. The CERB provides 13 weeks between March and October of this year. Once that up, I think there are some provisions to go into EI as well. At the end of the day, if you're calling your employees back and you know your environment is safe, you followed all the proper protocols, you're communicating effectively, and they simply refuse to come back, it's a tough situation. Because you want to be compassionate with them for their home situations, managing their anxiety. But at the end of the day, you have a business to run, and if they refuse to return to work, it's deemed that they have resigned from their role. You don't necessarily want to take that path, but you have to run your business and you have to get on. So you either upscale your staff, and the ones you come back, if they don't want to come back and your environment is safe and it's proven to be safe, then they have in fact resigned from their role.
Kaylin, I think you're back with us now. I was just wondering, you know, with the expansion, you mentioned that you've sort of been having to lay off employees, but also you are still looking to open new locations. What's your experience been in terms of attracting new employees through this time? What's been your experience?
Well, I think initially I did a memo to all our staff right out of the gate and sort of explained to them what will happen if they don't come back to work, and that the job market, especially in the restaurant industry, we're predicting anywhere between 30 and 50% of the restaurants to close permanently. So there's going to be an abundance of people available, and you talk about upskill. There's going to be a lot of quality restaurant workers that will be in the workforce. So we always give them, you know, a chance to come back. If they refuse to come back, then we look to hire other people. We're pretty much at full employment now. When we opened an IMO location, we had 25 employees. They were laid off for about a week before we decided to bring them back. And they've been fantastic. So our experience has been pretty good. I view ourselves as a premium employer. We do provide benefits. We provide higher wages. So there's a lot of upside for us. We also instituted an auto gratuity, which is at 12%. So that gives them a lot of wage support as well. So our average employee is making $16 an hour. Our managers are making over $20 an hour, plus they're getting about $8 an hour in tips through that process. We also, our employees have donated 20% of that gratuity to our foundation. So we provide meals to the community, at-risk population. So we really embraced the methodology that we're all in this together. We also ask our suppliers to donate to our foundation. And we provided food support for front care workers in the height of the crisis. We provide food for homeless populations, and we're actually delivering food direct to people who have income and food insecurity. So we deliver about 50 families a week direct to their home, both Italian food through our Zambri's brand and then burgers through our Big Wheel brand. So I think our staff really appreciate that. So I think our retention is better because of that, those types of things.
Excellent. Just a reminder to our audience, we are going to have a few minutes for questions at the end. And before we jump into those, I thought, Hedy, it might be worth asking you for your perspective. We've talked about CERB and some of the other government programs that are out there. Things like the wage subsidy program. Are you finding small businesses have been connecting with these programs and using them to their benefit for helping with payroll or helping with cash flow?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. We found that two of the most popular government programs that have been available to employers has been the Canada Emergency Bank Account, which is the $40,000 loan that's available to business owners. And it has recently expanded to employers who do not have a payroll as well, and that they have their expenses through non-deferrable expenses. So that's been an amazing program. It's been quite popular. The other program, as you mentioned, that has been probably the most popular government program has been the wage subsidy, the 75% wage subsidy. And we are seeing a lot of our clients, particularly in the recent months where they're getting ready to go back to work, utilizing some of these programs to generate interest and go back to their employees and try to rehire them back. The Canada Emergency Business Account had a tremendous demand, and we saw a huge uptick through our CIBC websites. The application process was made quite easily. We heard from our clients that this was the shortest application that they have ever gone through, and that they received this $40,000, and it only took about 5 to 7 minutes to apply for it. And then the money was in their account in less than 5 business days. And I would like to encourage our audience here that if they haven't utilized that, it's still not too late. They can go ahead and apply for that, as well as the 75% wage subsidy. The only requirement that really the wage subsidy has is that you need to have reduced income, reduced revenue of about 30%. For the months of April, May, and June relative to last year. And given the COVID impact and the COVID situation, that's not going to be difficult to find. I think a lot of the small businesses in Canada will have had that impact. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think we'll move to some audience questions. First one we have is, I think, directed to Kaylin and Sherry-Ann. Have you been able to attract new employees from other sectors that have shed workers and aren't reopening as much? Kaylin, maybe you could address that first of all. Or Sherry-Ann, have you
Sure.
Have you seen people interested in working
absolutely.
with you?
Absolutely. We're getting people from all kinds of industries. I've had people come from, I've had teachers actually looking for part-time help. And I think that's more of a family thing than it is a job thing. We've had people come from like nannying and doing in-home jobs, like live-in nannies and so forth. Obviously not needed anymore. So we've got a lot of those coming to apply for us. And I'm going to say, like, even retail, I think that people perhaps feel that cleaning a home is probably safer than being in a retail environment. And although retail was closed for a few months, but yeah, certainly the landscape of employee is changing, or candidate is changing. And we're trying our best to roll with it. Most people think, even cleaning a home is something relatively simple and straightforward, but there's a little bit more to it. So yeah, the workforce is definitely changing. Sorry, James, I missed that.
Oh, pardon me. We were moving on to another audience question, perhaps for Chris. What are you seeing, successful techniques have you seen in terms of staying engaged with employees who are working from home?
Communication. Communication is really, really important, ongoing, both as group and individual. As a team, I have a fairly large team, so I like to make sure that we're talking at least 2 or 3 times a week. It's a real challenge because we're already challenged in our work trying to manage multiple generations in a workforce all together in the same building. Now doing it virtually, it's a whole new world. But it's really important that you keep your staff engaged and you keep your communication lines open. That's really the primary one to keep things going.
Has anyone else had any luck with work from home strategies? Hedy, have you heard from your clients in terms of what works well for them?
Yes. So thank you for asking. Actually, I want to use the example of our teams at CIBC, and connecting with our teams and staying connected has been absolutely critical, and supporting each other because we're all working from home. Earlier on in COVID, we were being in touch through telephone and conference calls, etc. And then we learned that using technology to our advantage is absolutely important. And we started using platforms, of course, secure platforms, where we can at least see each other face to face, like a webcam, or using a webcam of some sort. It generates, again, that human touch that I was talking about a little bit earlier, and creating that team environment has been absolutely critical. Or even, like an after hours, a coffee chat, everybody grabs their favorite cup of coffee and favorite blend, and then we just get in front of a webcam through secured panels and just share some thoughts about what we've done during the day and what we do with our evenings. That has been very, very important, and it's worked well for us.
Excellent. I wanted to loop back to Kaylin, because I think we're back connected, and ask you for your perspective on this notion of attracting employees from other sectors. Have you seen that as you've been working on this or working through this?
I think so. Yeah, we've noticed that we've had applications of people with no experience in the restaurant industry before, some people from construction and other sectors. We're always willing to train anybody that comes, so I think it opens it up well. I think ultimately what needs to happen is people need to understand that they're going to have to do things a little bit different. They may have to pay a little bit more. They may have to increase benefits, things like that. I mean, it's going to be a big job pool with a small job market moving forward. So I think just looking at your business and figuring out what ways you can adapt and change. I know in the restaurant industry for ourselves, we're looking at everything top to bottom. And Haiti mentioned looking at cash flows, looking at pricing strategies. We've had to increase pricing. We went back to our suppliers and got concessions from them. We actually switched suppliers, which saves us 2 or 3%. Like every dollar makes a difference. And if you're in a business or an industry that is, on short margins, like the restaurant industry, you can't subsidize your customers anymore. You really need to just figure out how to make a decent profit so you can absorb and adjust to these types of crisis modes that you're in. You need to be able to have enough bankroll to survive.
Thanks so much for that. I think we have time for one more question. One of our audience members would like to ask, and I think I'll direct this to you to start, Sherry-Ann, just because you touched on this before. Are you seeing a difference in terms of the interest in work-life balance in terms of your employees or potential employees? Are people expressing different interests because of the situation we all find ourselves in these days?
Absolutely. And that's a really good question, because I think this idea of work-life balance has been kind of a buzz term for the past several years. And if there's one thing that COVID has done, it's really emphasized work-life balance. And people have really come to appreciate their life, whatever it is, their time. And so, even when we do have people who are able to work, they want to keep it to a limit because they've now found this new life, whether it's they spend more time with their children, they spend more time cooking, they spend more time with their husband. I think the landscape of work and what a 9-to-5 looks like is going to be changed. I really do. I think that people have more time for themselves now. And that really says a lot to, handling the fear and the change and these unprecedented times. So yeah, absolutely. I think that definitely people are appreciating life more, and they're really focused on balancing their life and with their work.
James, if I can,
Chris, yeah, please.
Yeah, if I can add on to that. We did survey our entire team across the country, and interesting enough, everybody came back with some sort of hybrid arrangement that they wanted. It wasn't coming back to the office 100%. So I think working from home is going to be the new norm, and working in the office will be your option. So we really going to see that, and the real estate footprint across this country over the next 10 years is really going to change with a lot of companies, particularly the big ones who take down a lot of buildings, and perhaps like CIBC as well. So we're going to see a huge shift in that, and because our team has adapted really well to this environment, and they're doing very, very well. You have to have the technology in place, and if you have the technology and you have the leadership, you can be very successful.
Excellent. I'd like to thank you all. We're going to have to leave it there today, but I'd like to thank everybody out there on the internet for joining us today. A reminder to the audience that we'll receive a link to the recorded version of this webcast in about a week, so you can go back and review it. I would, of course, like to thank our speakers for taking the time to share their thoughts. And once again, thank you to all of you for joining us. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Bye-bye.